When I began to prepare for my first worship service with you all, I was thrilled to learn that the lectionary gospel text for this day is this post-resurrection account from the 21st chapter of John. This is absolutely one of my favorite stories in the entire New Testament. The imagery is so powerful. If I close my eyes, I can feel the warmth of the rising sun. I can hear the gulls and the waves lapping at the shore. I can smell the brininess of the sea and the charcoal fire. And to be honest with you, I'm all in with the idea of breakfast on a beach with friends. But this passage is not about some bunny trip to go fishing. As the story unfolds, Jesus is making his third post-resurrection appearance to his disciples. The first appearance was at a house in Jerusalem in the evening, following the day of resurrection. The second appearance happened in the same place about a week later, and that is the story of Jesus confronting the disciple Thomas over his doubt and disbelief. For today's lesson, imagine for a moment that we're among the disciples. We've been fishing all night, but we have caught nothing. As our boat approaches the shore and the sky is beginning to show the light of a new day, we notice there's a guy standing on the beach. He's looking out at us with his hands on his hips, as if he's been expecting us for quite some time. Somehow, this guy knows we have not caught any fish, and he tells us where to drop our nets. Although we're tired and hungry and probably need a bath, we drop our nets again, mainly just to humor him. But this time we catch so many fish that we barely are able to haul our nets into the boat. Someone says to Peter, "It's the Lord." Peter, ever impulsive and strong-willed, jumps out of the boat to swim to shore, while the rest of us struggle to bring the boat in, dragging that net full of fish. When we finally do get our boat onto the beach, the guy tells us to bring some fish over to the fire he has built. He grills the fish and gives some to us along with bread. We now know who it is that made breakfast for us, and we're embarrassed that we didn't recognize the Lord sooner. With the sun now up and our bellies full, we just want to relax, enjoy the morning, and maybe take a nap. But Jesus is having none of that. He turns to Peter and asks a question. "Do you love me more than these?" Whoa, wait a minute. Did Jesus just ask Peter whether he loves Jesus more than we do? That's not fair. We love Jesus too. But without asking what Jesus meant, Peter answers, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus responds, "Feed my lambs." Okay, we think, question asked and answered, and we return to our nap. But then Jesus asks Peter a second time, "Do you love me?" Now we sit up, anxious to see where this conversation is headed. Peter again says, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus responds saying, "Tend my sheep." A third time, Jesus asks Peter, "Do you love me?" By now, we're all uncomfortable with this conversation. Peter's hurt and exasperated that Jesus keeps asking the same question over and over and over again. This time, his answer is even more emphatic. Something like, "Lord, you've asked the same question 3 times. You know I love you. I don't know a better way to answer the question so that you will be convinced." Jesus allows an uncomfortable silence before he calmly says, "Feed my sheep." Do you understand what's happening in this gospel story today? Do you see what Jesus is doing? This is not a story about conflict or confrontation. This is a lesson in reconciliation and grace. This post-resurrection account is a model for the way that faith in the Lord changes our human relationships from a state of animosity and brokenness to a state of harmony and love. On the night of his arrest, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, all but destroying the relationship between Jesus and Peter, even if those denials were preordained. Peter has had to live with the fact that he betrayed his friend and Lord for a few weeks already, that he denied Jesus in his hour of greatest need. The Gospels do not give us even a hint that Peter made any effort to repair that relationship. In the first 2 post-resurrection accounts, there's no mention of Peter seeking forgiveness from Jesus. In fact, Peter is not mentioned by name at all. In the scene from our gospel lesson today, Peter does not rush up onto the beach and throw himself at Jesus' feet, begging for forgiveness. There's no mention of any dialogue between Peter and Jesus until Jesus begins to ask questions. But Jesus has not given up on Peter. He has not walked away from his disciple. Instead, Jesus leads Peter to reconciliation by asking 3 times, "Do you love me?" While not stated explicitly, the parallels between Peter's 3 denials and Jesus' 3 questions are inescapable. Peter is not the one seeking to make things right with Jesus. It is Jesus who initiates reconciliation with Peter. It's Jesus who refuses to let go. It's Jesus who extends grace to end estrangement and reclaim friendship with Peter. It's Jesus who restores Peter to his leadership role and recommissions Peter with the command, "Follow me." Perhaps the most striking aspect of today's gospel lesson is the sense of disruption. The Gospel of John is full of stories where Jesus disrupts the commonly held positions of the day in order to teach his disciples that they must become the servants of all the children of God. In our scene on the beach today, Jesus could have just shown up for his disciples to enjoy his presence. He could have made breakfast for his disciples and then departed with a blessing, "Peace be with you." Jesus could have waited to see whether Peter would come around and seek to heal their broken relationship. But that's not Jesus' way. Instead, Jesus disrupts the morning calm by asking 3 times, "Do you love me?" Peter's affirmation 3 times is not enough. Jesus wants more from Peter than his words. Jesus wants Peter's life in action and in service to God. Jesus commands that Peter feed his sheep in ways that transform words of love into acts of love. And so it is with us. When Jesus enters our lives, he disrupts our quiet contentment, our status quo, even our ideas about a comfortable retirement. Our call to discipleship means yielding our lives to the one we call the Messiah. It means that we acknowledge, "Not my will, but yours be done." Jesus asks us again and again, "Do you love me?" and challenges us to show not only him, but the entire world that we do, in fact, love him. How then shall we answer Jesus' challenge to feed his sheep? We tend Jesus' flock by doing things great and small. By helping to stock the food pantry at Guadalupe, so that those who have no other means can find food for themselves and their families. Or by hanging drywall with Habitat for Humanity, so that folks can have safe and affordable housing. Or by helping kids attend church camp, so that they can begin to find their own path to God. Another way we tend the flock is by providing care and meals for families recovering from serious illness, giving them the time and space to heal. Or by inviting others to come to church with us so that they too can experience the shalom of our community. We care for Jesus' lambs by refusing to allow the most vulnerable among us to be invisible. We give voice to the poor, the persecuted, refugees, the prisoners, and the hungry, so that the world cannot forget their faces and their stories. We call out the rich and powerful for enhancing their own wealth at the expense of those who have little or nothing, and for their callous disregard for those who have no advocate. In a little while, we'll gather at the table where Jesus is both host and guest to eat the bread of life and drink from the cup of salvation in memory of his life, death, and resurrection. In this simple meal, we're nourished for the life and work of discipleship, so that when Jesus asks us his disruptive question, "Do you love me?" our answer will be all the ways we tend his sheep and follow him. Thanks be to God. Amen.